Hi, welcome everybody to this post-prandial Careers Open Day. And so first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the people that we have with us today. Then I'm going to say a few words about the joint faculty, and then we'll transit, and then my colleagues will speak to you as well, and then we'll kind of go into some question and answer. So just going around the room, I suppose I better introduce myself first. I'm Alexander Sampson. I'm the Vice Dean for Education in Arts and Humanities. And on my right here, I have Katerina Omerlin, who is a second year BA Geography student. Sitting next to her, we have Lizzie Turl, who did the BA in Archaeology and Anthropology, graduated in 2016 and is currently working in digital advertising. And finally, last but not least, we have Robert Donovan, who's the head of the UCL Careers Service, so a man of enormous wisdom and huge and kind of vast knowledge. So first of all, what I wanted to do was I wanted to talk a little bit about University College London and what we do in the joint faculties. I think the big thing that UCL is doing differently from other universities now is this kind of focus we have on research-based education. So the idea is that we want students, as soon as they start, from the very, very first day of an undergraduate degree, for them to be directly involved in the production of knowledge and the creation of new knowledge, for them to understand that the work and business of universities is about the breaking down of boundaries, looking for problems, asking new questions perhaps indeed that people haven't even kind of thought to ask up until this point. The joint faculties have around 9,000 students. So we are a very kind of large academic unit. Now, I just wanted to say a few things about degrees generally. So obviously, we're very interested in the student experience and providing as excellent an educational experience as we possibly can. How do we do that? Well, one of the ways that we do that is by encouraging disruptive, creative, critical thinking amongst our students. And obviously we do that through the research-based education that we offer. But also I think it's really important to remember that a university degree is not simply about learning a defined set of skills, a defined kind of corpus of knowledge. It's actually much, much broader. It's about learning how to think. It's about heuristic learning. It's about learning how to learning how to develop and take on new skills. Now, I think I hope I won't be contradicted by any of my colleagues on the panel when I say this, but I think that the world of work is changing enormously today. So, I mean, just at one statistic that I saw recently, about a third of jobs in the UK are going to disappear in the next 15 years to automation and artificial intelligence. Now, that, you might sort of think that perhaps only affects certain types of jobs, but in fact one of the areas that's going to be most affected by this is law, funnily enough, which one might expect to be an area that would not be subject to automation quite so easily. So I think we have to think about, what are the key things that you will always need human beings to do? And doing a degree in arts and humanities or social and historical sciences at UCL is going to develop exactly the kind of creative, interpersonal, intercultural skills that are going to be in demand in the world of work going forward into the future. So I just wanted to kind of make those very, very few points, and perhaps I will kind of use this platform just to mention very quickly my own area. So I'm a reader in early modern studies, and I teach in the Spanish, Portuguese and Latin American Studies department here, so in the languages department. And I just wanted to kind of very quickly say that, people tend to assume that the only reason for doing languages is because you want to go into teaching, for example, that's the only output. But in fact, less than 15% of language graduates go on to go into teaching. And there are all sorts of kind of fantastic advantages of studying modern languages, not least of which was one I discovered quite recently, that people who study languages are considerably less likely to suffer from dementia in later life. So the actual process of learning a language, in fact, changes the structure, neurological structure of your brain in such a way that it makes you kind of resistant or kind of more resistant to degenerative neurological diseases later in life. Just to kind of, four kind of major kind of reasons for doing languages. Now, the first reason is love. 63% of people who were surveyed who've learned a second language have dated somebody who speaks a different language than their own. I mean, the real reason for doing languages is that they're fantastically exciting, and you have, as part of your degree, the compulsory year abroad, which is obviously hugely exciting, the opportunity to go and forge a completely different life for yourself in a kind of another country, another culture, another language. Travel is a kind of huge kind of aspect of learning languages. Obviously, it makes you much, much more comfortable traveling to other countries. And in the kind of multinational corporate world, it's something that businesses specifically look for. In fact, a third of businesses specifically want people with language skills. So on the face of it, and I should probably stop here, but on the face of it, you might think, this is a degree path that doesn't necessarily have an obvious vocational outcome. Well, in fact, it does. There are all sorts of ways in which learning languages do lead into some quite specific areas because it gives you a set of skills, a set of abilities, a set of knowledge, which are absolutely kind of, essential and kind of hugely advantageous in the world of work. Just to kind of round off my little piece, I think a university degree is an extraordinary opportunity. It's kind of the only opportunity, or one of the kind of best times in your life to spend 3 years in which you can develop intellectually as a person, socially, all sorts of other ways, and it's about following your passion. Most degrees do not lead simply into a particular career path. It's the very flexibility that education provides. It's about the way in which it stimulates your imagination, broadens your horizons, and introduces you to novelty, doing new things, taking on new challenges. And I think that process of doing that is something that will be with you for life. And I think doing it once is a kind of, it's a wonderful opportunity. So, do it because you love it, do it for the passion, do it for the kind of the fun of it, and it will pay dividends inevitably over your life and also in terms of your career. So I'm not sure who I'm going to go to next. I think I'm going to Robert next. I'm going to hand over to Robert, who's going to talk far more sensibly and specifically, I think, about careers.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. So I'm Robert Donovan from UCL Careers. Just to clarify, Alex very kindly promoted me in the first minute. I'm deputy head at UCL Careers. Okay. Our director, Karen Barnard, will want to be name-checked in this context, but thank you. I'm going to speak very briefly, I think, but hopefully we've got some questions coming through as well. I think a few things I would say. One, my role in particular oversees our provision, not only at the centre of UCL, but also particularly with reference to laws, the Institute of Education, Socio-Historical Sciences and Arts and Humanities. So I've got a particular interest in some of the degrees that some of you are pursuing. My instinct is, and I speak as a father of a son who graduated from UCL History a couple of years ago and has a daughter doing fashion, she's doing fashion down in Bournemouth, is follow the instinct for a subject that interests you. I really think that would be my bottom line, that where there is a passion for a subject, that will be a strong motivator to carry you through the 3 or 4 years that you're at the institution. Now, the only riders on that might be, do I have a long-term particular plan where I might need to think a little more specifically about a particular area? Or, and this is, I've certainly talked to a couple of English students about this before, or people who haven't gone on to study English, might study it intensively, perhaps spoil the joy I get from it as a subject. So there's a few things to consider, but my fundamental would be what subject really motivates you. In terms of context, the reason I say that is because in terms of the graduate labour market, we know that 80% plus of the roles that individuals go into, graduate level roles, do not require a specific subject area within the degree qualification. Yes, they will want a degree qualification, but it's not about a specific subject at that stage. But it is about other things. It's about being motivated by an understanding of where you want to go and why. It'll be a case of an awareness of what the role might consist of, what a certain organisation or sector is about, but also in terms of evidence in that you're a fit for what a company is looking for down the line. Yes, there's the academic attainment, but you're also able to show that kind of motivation and development of the broader skill set, the kind of competency set as it's often known, that a lot of companies look for. And this will then tie in with the key message of Alex's is that the UCL experience, any university experience, can, and in my opinion, should be much broader than the academic experience. It's about doing things, about really finding out what other extracurricular activity you can engage in, which will provide that sort of evidence of things you've done that make you fit for particular roles down the line. So you don't do it to get the jobs necessarily, but it's very, very useful currency in time. Couple more minutes because I think that's really important context. The only thing I'd say at UCL Careers, we have a substantial and effective team. We hold a great central provision of one-to-one support, major fairs, or themed weeks where we take particular areas, such as this week we have our media week on, where we get a lot of organisations coming in. Yes, you need to put a lot of thinking down the line into careers plans and aspirations, but UCL do have the name and reputation, which means that organisations are attracted to come here. So it's a great bonus as a first starter in that respect. And then also whatever department you end up in, if you were to come and join us, then we would provide some kind of local provision there and work with the academic staff and other members of the team to support you in that way as well. So that just gives a flavour of some of the messages as far as I'm concerned, but also the sort of support on offer. And I'll hand back to Alex.
Thanks very much, Robert. So I think we'll come now to Lizzie Turl, who's got the microphone. She's not going to sing for us, but perhaps you could say a little bit about your path and your degree, and then kind of how you've ended up where you've ended up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I studied BA Archaeology and Anthropology, and I graduated in September last year. 2 weeks after my graduation, I started the world of work, which was far too quick. But I started work in digital advertising, which was quite a strange step from archaeology and anthropology, but one which I could only have got to because of my degree and because of my time here at UCL. Half the degree that I did and those transferable skills, which are so important that you learn as you're studying a degree anywhere, partly just because UCL does offer such amazing career servicing. And lastly, kind of going on from what you just said, the extracurricular activities and stuff that I also did surrounding that degree. So for me, one of the biggest ways that I managed to get into that career sector was definitely by and through work experience. Each summer of my university study, I would do internships, work experiences, whatever I could apply and get my hands on. And that's definitely something I would advise all the way from sixth form through university, just supporting that study with other insights and experiences with the world of work. Some of them were completely irrelevant to what I'm doing now, but all of them relevant in terms of the skills that I learned, the people that I met, and the experiences that I had, and exposure that I had to people who were potentially, managers, CEOs, whatever it might have been, was incredibly useful to what I've come into now. But at UCL, I studied archaeology and anthropology. I adored it. It was definitely a passion from school. I loved time team and excavations and being outdoors, and I found out that I could do a degree where I was constantly outdoors and getting to travel, and I was paid to travel by UCL. So that was right up my street. And I absolutely adored it. I think I often get told that advertising has nothing to do with archaeology, and I think that is wrong. I think branding is one of the oldest trades that capitalism has had. I studied for 3 years about trade, about branding, about the very start of that term and literally being something that you would put on a piece of cattle, to what it developed into with things like the Silk Road, through the physical excavation of that in archaeology, and also the anthropological element of that, why people behave the way they do, why we respond differently to behaviour, to branding, emotion, and that has all tied in so well to what I do now. in a very bizarre way, but that's my story.
Lizzie, thank you so much. That's
Pleasure.
fantastic. Really, really interesting. I'm going to pass over to one of our current students now, Katarina Homelin, who's a second year in BA Geography, and she's going to just say a few words about her experiences.
Yeah. So when I started looking at universities and sort of what I was going to do after high school, I just based it on my interest in school, and geography was one of the subjects that I did and I absolutely loved. And then I told my parents about it, and they were sort of like, what are you doing? Like, they were kind of shocked because they had never really heard of geography as a degree. They didn't really see what it had to do with like careers that I was looking to go into. They didn't think it was what I should do, but I went through with it anyways, and I'm so happy that I did. And now I'm in second year, and I started off doing both physical and human geography, and now in second year I've specialized only on human geography because I realized that that's really where my passion lies. And so far I've had a really great time. I've really enjoyed studying both physical and human, and now specializing on human geography. And when I was in high school, I was looking to go into sort of humanitarian aid and development work, working for NGOs. That was always my dream. And since coming here, I've met so many amazing people, and I've done so many things that I didn't realize I was interested in, but that I've really liked. That now my options have kind of widened, I guess. I did an internship in the summer with an NGO, and they do development work in the Philippines, and I realized how important human rights and law is. So now I'm doing a couple of extracurriculars with UCL that are related to that, and looking sort of into law as a career option. I'm also looking towards politics because of one of the modules that I'm doing right now, which I'm really enjoying, which is geopolitics. So for my next summer, I'm looking towards an internship with the Foreign Office. So overall, I would agree with everything that's been said so far.
Good.
Just do what you like, follow your passion, and I think something good will come out of it.
Well, of course, the problem with all of this is that I now want to do a degree in archaeology and anthropology and geography as well. But I can't. We must kind of now come to you. So I think we'll move into the questions. So thank you all very much to the panel.
Okay,
We will
pleasure.
do our very best to answer and respond to some of the queries that we've had. So the first question that I've got up on my screen is: does UCL offer language classes after admission if I haven't met the language requirements before admission? So I was just consulting with the students here, and the answer is yes. Yes. So they do. We do offer. They do offer a kind of a term-long language course so that you can kind of meet that requirement. Does UCL offer language classes after admission? Oh, sorry. This is one. Oh God, hang on, I've got another question here. They're all coming in thick and fast. What is? What is UCL's BSc Economics with a placement year like?
I can touch on it briefly.
Okay.
So this is a newly created program. So what was a traditional 3-year undergraduate program is having a pilot this year, where I think just perhaps 5 or 6 students will be applying and doing a 4-year program with 1 year in industry. Which is an element of break from tradition, but a very positive one as far as I'm concerned, because those years in industry are a fantastic platform for going forward down the line. But essentially the students will source opportunities. They will have to apply for them formally, but there's obviously good relationships between the department and some of the organisations in question. And I personally am working with those students to do sort of mock interviews and help them think about their self-marketing and some of the messages that they want to get across. So it's a new idea, but a very, very positive one. And the year in industry is not something that UCL has traditionally embraced as a research-led institution, but there's a very progressive approach and attitude in not only our faculties, but others to consider that.
Indeed in engineering, I was going to say, the engineering faculty have
Absolutely.
their programs. They've won heaps of teaching awards for what they've done with industry. Okay, I've got another question here. Best degree or other general advice for entering security services?
Oh wow.
MI5, MI6, general intelligence officer role, etc.
Wow.
I think
Love
that.
Obvious. Great question. So, I mean, I think, an obvious thing to say would be perhaps, languages are always going to be helpful. in that context. So that's a possibility. But I don't know, what do other people on the panel
I
think?
have a
There's
bizarre-
There's a particular master's, isn't
Is there?
at UCL
Gosh, okay.
Security,
security studies.
So there
There's
is a
security
particular
studies
master's
and
programme.
master's program. That's right.
But I think in terms of undergrad, I think you're absolutely right in the language
Yeah.
front, and I don't think, again, you'd have to be thinking, I've got to tie myself at this stage.
No,
you could
no.
do, you could do
History, so
you could do English
Yes.
literature.
Going into-
We both know people who
Yeah. I have a friend in geography who's thinking of going
Geography's
into
doing it,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
So
So-
my sister, who I live with, did history, sadly not at UCL, and she is now a detective.
Right.
So that worked very well for her.
Not irrelevant. Yeah.
But it's from her job. It's something which I think any arts and humanities, and be it language, be it economics. I mean, it really is such a wide breadth of a career to go into, and one that you will have so much experience.
Well, it would be phenomenal.
when it
and I
begins.
would just, sorry to butt in, I would
Yeah,
just
no.
echo the messages again that a fantastic idea, one thing to go and get the academic undergraduate study under your belt, but it's developing the awareness of what you're aspiring to get into
Yeah.
and why, and thinking about what is it that will impress down the line as you sort of self-market your way towards it.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Okay, I've got another question. Do you have any advice for a junior in America thinking of studying abroad? And my advice is do it. Yes, it's. I mean, you know, I mean, I think one of the, UCL bills itself as London's global university. You know, it is such an extraordinary institution. It's such a privilege and a pleasure to work here with just incredible diversity of people, of subjects, of kind of events, of cultural kind of happenings going on around the university. So I really think that somebody who I don't know where you're from in America, but I think it will be an enriching experience, and really no matter what parts of the United States you come from.
For sure. And UCL has such a rich amount of international students.
Yeah, 150 countries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
About 150 countries represented, I
it's
think,
absolutely
at UCL.
amazing. The first week here at university, you're just wowed by how many different cultures and people you meet.
And just to add, we have hundreds who will do a year abroad as part of their 4-year
Yes.
programme, and just to reverse the idea, we know how that develops people and really helps them experience something they obviously wouldn't have, but that can become transferable and marketable too in career terms.
Fantastic. I've got a question here. I will shortly be applying to do psychology with education. Is it possible to carry out your own research project in the 3rd year? So I'm not absolutely certain about the kind of detail, the specific answer to that question. But what I would say is that the student project is something that UCL are pushing very hard because we want to develop the research skills of students and their ability to do their own independent projects. So I think in most undergraduate programs now, the undergraduate dissertation, the undergraduate project, whatever it's called, is normally a kind of a compulsory part of the program, and is something that we very much kind of design the programs to build up to. So I don't know if you both have experience. Yeah, I mean,
well, my flatmate does psychology in second
Right.
year as well.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Well,
So
wonderful.
I know from her, I have to do her experiments every second week. So I know that she has to, as part of one of her modules, she gets to design in a group of 4 or 5 her own module, her own experiment every second week, and carry out the research, program the experiment online, and then code it, analyze it, and then write a lab report about it. So it's really all based around their own ideas. I always get to hear about it. So yeah.
Again, there's quite a tricky question here. Does doing a numerate degree help your career? So I assume that's a question about maths. No, we're not doing an open day for mathematical sciences. But what I would say is that in nearly every single, I think, we talk in universities a lot about interdisciplinarity, about cross-disciplinarity, and the kind of ways in which different disciplinary skills and new combinations of skills taken from different areas are producing new fields all the time. So in my own case, for example, I direct a Centre in Digital Humanities. So, the digital has made it possible not simply to do, to kind of make research quicker, on one level, it's brought to me, to my very desk, a vast kind of quantity of archives and documents which I would have had to travel to libraries to go and see before. So, a historical research project that might have taken, 5 years in the past can now be done so much more quickly because I can access the material instantaneously from my laptop. However, it's not just about that. It's also about the nature of the way in which information is structured and presented, the ways in which you can interrogate it and ask questions. So we're doing a major research project at the moment on reading practices in the 16th century. Now, digitizing material, it doesn't only make it more accessible, it also allows you to ask new questions that you couldn't previously ask. Essentially, so we can look at the way that people annotate text, the way that people are responding to text at that time, and begin to ask more general questions across a whole corpus of books, for example, to say, what are the specific bits of these books that they're interested in and are pulling out. So I'm not sure that fully answers your question, but it's a kind of way of answering the question.
It's a very tricky one. I mean, numeracy per se is going to be very relevant in certain contexts, but it's going to come back to you and interests and the sort of direction you're looking to take. A number of organisations, I'm interviewing in our context for a data analyst in a couple of days' time, we will want a certain benchmark level in terms of ability to manipulate data and so on, but what will be more important with that person will be their ability to extract from the data and present an argument and discuss it, as well as just do clever manipulation. So often these skills aren't just sitting there in isolation, unless there really is a very specific focus, kind of an actuarial context as a mathematician or something like that. So also I'd just say that organisations will test for certain things because they need a certain level. But again, with those tests, you're not trying to get 100%, you're just trying to get past certain benchmarks. And it'll be for your good to get past them if you want to do that sort of job, or it's an awareness raiser if you find you don't. So, so I'd say it's more like that. It's a subtler thing.
Does it come into either of your kind of area?
Yes and no. Maths was never a huge part of my degree. Definitely numerical reasoning in terms of applying to graduate schemes was big. And I definitely got to that point and thought, I haven't done maths in a while.
There we go.
But yeah, it's definitely a point of getting past a mark, and I was shocked at how much more able I was than I thought I was. Well, that makes sense. But in my day-to-day life now, I use Excel a lot, but that does the maths for me. So it's less applicable to me, but I think breadth is always the best way. And even if you're dead set on maths and that's the career for you and that's the degree for you, I would always say, get some work experience elsewhere, try something new,
with it. Yeah.
Really broaden your set so you're not completely narrowing down to the one mathematical focus.
How about geography?
Yeah, I guess it depends on
Human geography.
what direction you go into. Yeah, so for
Yeah.
me, there's not so much math. I do a bit of programming, which I didn't know about until I came here, which is interesting, but not a lot of math.
Fantastic. Well, and I just kind of perhaps sort of had one kind of final point on the issue of numeracy is that numbers can only do certain things, and I know for a fact that when accountants do present spreadsheets and talk about numbers, really it's not about the numbers on the spreadsheet in front of you, it's about the story that they allow you to
Absolutely.
tell. So it really, in some ways, it's interesting to me, it fascinates me, the relationship between hard data and telling a story. And actually perhaps it's more about that ability to tell the story using the numbers.
Totally agree.
And perhaps one of the problems with Philip Hammond, Spreadsheet Phil as he's known, is his inability to tell us the story. Okay, so we've got a couple more questions. So we've got some kind of more. So we've got a couple of questions about specific admissions questions to do with the requirements for particular degree programs. So I've got a couple of questions around those things. So I would just encourage you to contact the admissions tutors in the relevant departments. I mean, I don't have the information from the 20 departments that are covered by the joint faculty, at my fingertips today for this event. However, I've got a couple more questions here. I was looking to get into advertising and thought that I thought I would need to do business. So can I check that I wouldn't actually need to go down that degree path?
I mean, I hope not, because I've messed up.
Yeah, so I think the answer is no.
I would say essentially no. I mean, unless that particular program and that course was particularly interesting, the answer is no. And that links to the fact, if you look at the advertising context, well, there's so many different types of role. So are you going to be the person who's going to be the account manager, pulling things together with great organisation and communication skills? Are you at the raw creative, sort of inspirational concept end of things, or are you more at the practical end who's doing some specific implementation in a particular area? So in that context, it's not always a case of, again, mapping the degree to a sector as a whole. It's a case of thinking of, from your point of view, perhaps what aspect of advertising is required. But yeah, just to come back to the actual answer, we have a number of people who go into all kinds of arenas relating to advertising or directly in some of the agencies, and they will come from fairly standard degree backgrounds.
Yeah. Fantastic, thank you guys very much. Okay, now another question. Would you recommend geography, even if that may not be the career route that I want to take?
Yeah, 100%. So the people in my course, we all have different career ideas. We have different pathways that we want to take and different things that we want to do in the future. I don't even know, a lot of people that I tell that I do geography, they kind of ask me what do you even do with that later? So I definitely don't think there's one career path that geography leads you to.
No.
And even within the geography department, as you specialize, as you go down the years, you specialize further. So in the beginning, the first year, you do a whole breadth of different modules. And then in second year, and especially in third year, you really start to specialize in the areas that you want to go into. So you can do a whole bunch of different things with that.
I mean, I think I would just to kind of sort of follow on from that point that Catherine's made there. I think it's very, very important to realise is that, on the face of it, disciplinary, you apply for a degree like geography. That doesn't mean oxbow lakes and kind of, and icebergs and things like that.
Yeah.
Or, and the same is true of history and modern languages and so on. So any degree program which on the face of it is about, what you think that subject might be. But, doing geography, human geography, you are thinking about issues to do with development, you're thinking about all sorts of kind of social and global challenges, in fact. Issues to do with sustainability, to do with population, to do with tourism. So it's something that there would be this sort of incredible plethora of degree titles, but they're kind of gathered under these headings, but they express so much more. And in my own area, for example, Spanish. Who would think that you would kind of end up making a short film version of a 17th century play? And then kind of broadcasting that to the world, and then kind of discussing that with students on the other side of the world in relation to the diversity of Los Angeles in terms of its Hispanic heritage and culture, and why Hispanic Golden Age theatre is not something that's taught as standard, but rather it's Shakespeare that dominates in LA schools. So just to kind of give you one example of how the specific kind of leads very, very quickly into the kind of very, very general, kind of global, although I hate to add, not generalised. Okay, so let me have a look, come back to the questions. So does UCL help students find internships for the summer? I guess you guys can kind of answer this question.
So there's a whole bunch of different career guidances available that UCL offers. Actually, 2 days ago, I was at a one-to-one meeting with a career guidance counselor.
Excellent.
And you just go and you just talk about whatever you want. It's free, and you sign up on the day. And they help you out with whatever they can. The internship that I did in the summer, I found myself, but I know that there's a variety of events that you can go to where you can find possible companies, employees, and there's a lot of guidance available.
If I can just add to that, thanks for the endorsement as well, that was great. But I think it's very important to us that much as we attract a lot of different employers onto site in terms of the fairs and the different events we run, and there's a real mix of those. The ultimate aim is to get students to equip themselves, if you like, with the tools to think, right, how do I go about securing opportunities? So absolutely, there's obvious website resources by sector and different areas that we can signpost students towards. They have the opportunity to meet organisations at recruitment fairs, come to themed weeks. various skills sessions that recruiters run and so on. But actually a big part of it as well is educating individuals about proactively developing opportunities and using their own skills of connection and research, and just sometimes trying to generate an opportunity to interview an organisation for information's sake.
Yeah.
Builds their own individual network, develops their own intelligence and awareness, and can often, and we see it a lot, lead to a project work opportunity that is rooted, that might not be formally advertised, but gets generated as a result. Sorry, you can see.
So I was very lucky that within the Institute of Archaeology, our careers staff were absolutely amazing, and they definitely helped out a lot. But for me, it was exactly that. I wasn't fortunate enough to have a family with contacts or anything like that. My parents are teachers, but it was definitely going out and finding it, the same as you. So all my internships and work experiences were from that, and particularly in my second year, I lived in a horrible flat opposite a big warehouse, and I would see from my bedroom window different companies, and they all looked amazingly fun, and I could see ping pong tables and bean bags, and I thought that's where I wanted to be. So I got,
work is about.
well, it looked amazing, and I was like, that's what I want. So I got a list of the companies who worked there, and I Googled them all, and the ones that looked good, I sent an email to the top person I could find on their LinkedIn, and I asked them to meet me for a coffee, because I said I was a neighbour and I was interested. And they met me, and they loved the flattery, of course they did. And then at the end of that coffee, I asked, do you do work experience? And mostly it was a no. Could I come? Could I come shadow for a week? And yeah, of course. And that led to each summer, different jobs and lots of ping pong. And then from there, I sort of got into the swing of things like work experience and applied to different things online. And for me, it was the BBC. I would recommend it to anyone, from all the way from school to graduate. They have amazing career experience programs. Apply. It takes a long time, but if you are lucky enough to get through the interview processes, it was incredibly worth it. And that was my story. But yeah, just go and find it. That people will have you.
No, I agree. Within the department, there's also a lot of opportunities. So I think I get emails every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that the department sends to all the undergraduates with internship opportunities, volunteering opportunities, work experience, everything. So.
And I still do. I still get careers emails from it. So it's good. It's lovely.
And I think, all of those stories kind of underline the importance of those kind of soft skills of being, confident, self-confidence is incredibly important, and being proactive. I mean, just asking the question, knocking on the door is the kind of, the key thing. Okay, let's see what else we've got. So I've got, should you study something that you're good at or something you're passionate about, even if you don't have much experience in that area? Ooh.
It's so debatable. It was
such a tricky question.
This was me in
that's a good
sixth form.
question. Well
Chemistry was my best A-level by far. I was so much better at chemistry than anything else. My best A-level, hands down. But I really wanted to do archaeology and anthropology. And I was pushed in different ways, pushed and pulled by different people, teachers for sure. But I'm glad I chose the one that I was passionate about both, and I still am, and I've still found chemistry within Arch and Anth. I did an awful lot of carbon dating, which was chemistry. You can find subjects in anything. But for me, it could have been a flip of a coin, frankly. But it just went down to something which I thought I could do for 3 years and was completely different to what I had done at school. I hadn't had the opportunity to do archaeology. Who does at school? I've been doing chemistry the whole way through. Knew I loved it, but really wanted an experience of doing something else. Frankly, UCL is the best in the world for archaeology. So it really is. So how could it is? Oh God, the IOA is amazing. So I couldn't turn down that opportunity. There you go.
Thank you very much. I mean, and I think again that's sort of really. I mean, that question is such a difficult question to answer. I mean, in many ways, but it's a great question because I think it makes us think once again about the importance of focusing on process rather than product, on focusing on development rather than where you are in a specific point in time. So it may be that if you pursue a subject, perhaps you're not, you haven't developed those skills, you haven't practiced those skills as much, but your passion will carry you through, will mean that you make great strides. So I think it's in each individual case you're just going to have to kind of think about, have a sort of little reflect on what you do. I think it's really important to do, whatever you do something you're passionate about.
That would be my starting point.
If you're good at it as well, then also good. If you're really bad about something and passionate about it, I don't know how to what to say.
Maybe just do an evening class or something like that. But it's a tricky one. I would follow the passion route myself, and that's always been my philosophy, because I think that will carry you through an energy for a subject and so on. Now, of course, there's some practical questions. Yeah, are you equipped enough to get through the application process to get into that program?
Yeah.
But then might it be a challenge in some respects? And there's always stories. We'll always meet students who have some reservation about what they've signed up to.
And I think that this is important as well about in terms of careers as well. That at the end of the day, whether it's education or being successful in a career, the vast majority of cases involve incredibly hard work. I mean, we don't tend to emphasise, that coming and doing a degree is very difficult and really hard. It's meant to be hard, but that is part and parcel of it. So if you do not have that commitment and that motivation, then it is going to be a struggle. And I think that's true of life as much as it's true of education. So
you want something that energises you when
exactly.
you wake, and I think that's where the risk question might come in. What will not risk de-energise me if I have too many negatives?
Got a kind of an interesting question that follows up on this discussion, because we're getting quite philosophical. So someone has asked, does course prestige matter? Will doing a harder degree, such as statistics, more maths again, be more useful than management?
No.
So I think the answer to that question is no. From someone who just said that the English of Archaeology was the best in the world. So I think, of course, I think it's interesting to think about the prestige of particular courses. So, I think employers generally, I would guess, are not as granular. They will look at a degree from UCL, and the kind of prestige that the institution as a whole enjoys will kind of bleed into their attitude towards that particular degree. Depending, I mean, maybe there are. So let me pass over to you, Robert. You probably know. You probably know a bit
I think
more on this
comment.
one.
Consciously or subconsciously, there'll be awareness of an institution like UCL, and in practical terms, UCL is probably on a list of 12 or 15 universities where a lot of these companies will come, and therefore the exposure for the student to the companies and vice versa will be very, very strong. But to come back to the question, I think you're absolutely right. When it gets to the level of specific degree programme, there won't be a prestige attachment. For the minority of occasions, there'll be a practical academic skills element, which is vital. But as I say earlier, that's the minority of cases.
Having said that, I would underline that UCL departments. In all the kind of prestige measures, like the international league tables, languages are 8th best in the world, et cetera, et cetera. So, the fact of the matter is that these departments do score very, very well in terms of their kind of global awareness about them and their kind of global positions. Obviously, that's something that perhaps students and their parents pay as much attention to, perhaps more attention to than businesses and then recruitment teams themselves, because they're also looking at the individual rather than just simply the degree or the subject area.
Question I talked about as well. What else that individual will be able to offer?
So I've got another question, a really good question. I'm studying Spanish for A-level and I speak Russian, French and English. Is it an option to take up a new language like Arabic and study it with psychology? Oh wow, that's a really complicated kind of admissions question. Yes, you can study some kind of modern language degree programs here. I think you can certainly do Spanish. I'm not sure you can do Spanish and Arabic. I think you can do French and Arabic. I don't think that is an option. But I think, again, contact the admissions tutor just to clarify the specific possible combinations. How demanding is a humanities degree for people whose first language isn't English in terms of writing academic papers? No, I think I don't know. I'm just kind of obvious person to turn to would be Katerina.
Yeah. So English is not my first language because I'm from Germany. Okay, right. Okay, so English is not my first language because I'm from Germany. I did go to an international school for 2 years, so I do have a bit of background of writing in English, but there is a whole a big amount of people in my course whose first language also isn't English, and it's not a problem. I would say that in the beginning it's probably a bit more difficult and it takes a bit longer to get into. But for example, for my degree, the first year does not count a lot towards the final degree, and you have various opportunities where you can practice, write essays, write coursework, and get feedback on it without it being marked or counting towards anything. And by second year, you should have gotten to a level that is more or less equal to that of native speakers.
I think that, you know, this in terms of UCL education, this is a very kind of complex issue. There's been a big move in the university towards more formative rather than summative assessment. And what I mean by that is assessments which allow you to experiment and to practice, but which don't actually count to the kind of the mark that you get at the end of the course. So we're trying to provide students with more opportunities in that sense to do work, to do the kinds of assessments that we ask them to do, but ones which won't necessarily go forward. But also there's a balance to be struck, because I think, you know, one of the things that's been said in education in general is that we over-assess in this country at every level, and that goes back to the level that you know, most of the people listening right now are at. So I think, you know, I think that that's a really kind of pertinent issue. How demanding is it? I think the answer is it is demanding. I mean, it is tough, but what I would say is that we have great support. So one of the things that I'm very passionate about and have been involved in actually rolling out to the entire university is something called the Writing Lab, which is a service where you can go in and you can get support from current doctoral students. So these are people who are studying for PhDs, and you know, we try as much as possible to pair you with somebody who's in a relevant disciplinary area, so they're used to the kind of academic conventions of writing, the kinds of demands, the kinds of things that tutors will expect. So there is, you know, and you can book a half an hour one-to-one session with somebody like that, take in an essay, and they will go through it line by line, paragraph by paragraph, to kind of point out where you're going wrong. So if you do that early on in your degree, you should you know, come on enormously. And I think, you know, it's worth pointing out that kind of achieving, you know, the ability to do a degree in a second language is an extraordinary endorsement of your intellectual ability. So, you know, if you're up for the challenge, my advice would be go for it. So, okay, a couple of final questions. We've only got a couple more minutes left now, I'm afraid. So, how flexible is UCL in terms of changing degrees or department within the first year if I realise I made a mistake and would like to change? I think the answer is we're relatively flexible about people changing their degrees, but there is a kind of it is time limited. So you will have a few weeks to attend classes and so on. I'm not sure what the last moment you can. Do any of you know when?
Not totally
I think for the first years who came in September, the deadline just passed last week.
Right, okay, so it's about six weeks or so. You have about roughly that. I think, you know, but again, I think, you know, email somebody in the admissions team for a
The one thing I'd ask is whether that guarantees you can just transfer to somewhere else. I mean, the courses themselves would have been in huge demand already. So I don't know that it's just a seamless thing if you want to change.
I think sometimes it's department by department. For me, doing a split degree, archaeology and anthropology, it was easier for students, but it wasn't easy, and it was very dependent on how well you had done in your first year. So students who had overall got around 70 were far more likely to be able to be accepted to say just do anthropology.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions very briefly. What kind of careers can an undergraduate degree in philosophy and economics lead to, and does it make you significantly more employable than just philosophy? Well, I think the obvious one to answer that question is that PPE is the degree of choice for politicians. So I think half the people who are sitting around the cabinet table have done PPE. So, and UCL, this is a new degree program that UCL has just set up, and it's going to be absolutely fantastic. So I would strongly encourage you to kind of think about doing that degree. Yes, it does give you kind of greater breadth, I think, to do, you know, politics, philosophy, and economics. But, you know, Robert, you wanted to jump in just to say...
I talked to a student with that combination recently who was entering onto the graduate scheme at the Treasury. So there's an example of a route that might be, and philosophers I've seen with economics the emphasis probably on philosophy, but it was more again marketing, which is a very popular area. And I think I saw someone who was management consultancy driven and going in that direction. So there really is that breadth question again with that combination.
Fantastic, thank you. Final question: if you don't manage to get a 2-1, will your career be over?
No, you still have to have one. Yeah, that's the deal. What can I say? In practical terms, for some of the larger corporations, the 2-1 is a cut-off. And that's really to just help them almost control the numbers. A number of those organisations know they are losing good candidates who've got 2-2s, but might have the breadth and the balance they're looking for, but it's a practical question. Having said that, a number of those companies are now embracing 2-2s more. They really are looking to get the breadth of ability. I would then say, just to contextualise that, the vast majority of people who go into graduate level work would do so in much smaller niche organisations. And again, there it's about the overall fit, not just the academic attainment.
Yeah, exactly. I think for that, my only piece of advice would be, if you think you might not achieve that, or that might be your weak point, bulk up the rest of your CV with other things. If you have so much more experience in said sector or a similar one, you will stand out higher than someone with a first in some cases. For me, it was a separate scenario, but I would apply to jobs that would specifically ask for a first, and I was still being interviewed despite the fact only having a 2-1. And there are jobs which only ask for first. Often I was rejected, obviously, but sometimes I was interviewed, so it does help.
Yeah, great. Fantastic. All right, look, I think our time is up. I'm very sorry, everybody. It's been a great pleasure hosting you here at UCL. I hope that this has been useful. I hope you've enjoyed it. And we will be doing more of these open days, I think, in the future. So, stay tuned and sign up for the next one if you want. If your question didn't get asked today, maybe you can kind of, as I say, I advise you to contact an admissions tutor directly. But thank you to everyone. A big thank you to the panel. You've been absolutely wonderful. More than I could possibly have expected as a host. So thank you very much. And that's it.